Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Virginia Conference District Alignment Virtual Listening Session. My name is Scott Davis. I serve as the Lynchburg District Superintendent. On July 1st, 2021, I'll move into a new appointment, the District Alignment Transition Coordinator. I am your host tonight. We are so glad you are here. You may be wondering about the flow of our evening. In a moment, we will open with prayer, then we will move to a video, and then we'll walk through 6 recommendations that are part of our PowerPoint presentation. We value your feedback. Your feedback helps us shape the work of the IDAT, and the IDAT team is listening. You will find in the Q&A a link to a Google form. This is going to have the feedback questions, which are going to show up in purple text throughout our presentation. After each panelist makes his or her presentation, there will be a moment for you to enter your responses. You may also go to vaumc.org/DAT to access that form as well. You can also enter your questions in the Q&A throughout the event tonight. It's important to keep in mind that the IDAT is making recommendations. We do not have decision-making authority. I do want to take a moment to introduce our panelists. We have DS Denise Bates, who is the Farmville and Danville District Superintendent. The Reverend Tracy Bates, a former district superintendent who is the pastor of Impact SoNo in the Elizabeth River District. Sandra Fulcher, Danville District Office Administrative Assistant. We also have David Domacy, our conference treasurer, and Carol Draper, the assistant treasurer, is helping tonight as well. So I'm going to invite Denise to begin with prayer.
Good evening, friends. Would you join your hearts and minds with mine in prayer? Wondrous God, we gather together tonight as your people who love you and seek to live in and live out the love you share with us. As time and circumstances change, you have always called your people to adapt and be transformed so that the kingdom work you call us to will be fruitful. Our connection with you and with each other is alive. And in living, we open ourselves to grow, to adapt, so we remain in alignment with your vision and journey together on your pathway, one that is designed by you, so that all may know the transforming love of Christ. Open our hearts and minds to the movement of your Spirit among us tonight and always. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Denise. Friends, next we will look at a video which includes voices from the members of the IDAT.
So what I love about what I see emerging here is that there will not be cookie cutter solutions or garden variety support, but contextual resourcing based on specific context, and also flexibility with churches, allowing for course correction while continuing to listen for God.
I'm excited about the information that's been shared regarding district alignment. I believe it will allow for the creation of new resources for our clergy to reach areas of need in their communities, to work with those areas to ease the pain felt by COVID, by unemployment, or by difficult life situations.
I want to share with you what excites me about district superintendents being freed up to be mission strategists. A mission strategy is one who sets goal, one who determines action and achieves the goal, one who mobilizes resources to execute the action. With our current structure, I'm unable to faithfully accomplish those responsibilities. And so I'm excited about the recommended changes because it provides an opportunity for me to utilize my gifts, my skills, my experiences, my ability, my knowledge, and capacity to function as a missionary strategist. And so one of the things we must do in the Virginia Conference is that we must build a culture of excellence, one of adaptability and innovation.
I believe one of the greatest strengths of being a Methodist church is that we are a connectional church. And that means we are blessed to have a system. Or at least we have a potential to build such a system that can support each church and disciple to faithfully reach out to the community around them. I want to see us being such an organic connection that can empower our possibilities. I envision an effective structure that can acknowledge the strengths and opportunities in each community as much as their limitations and weaknesses. I want to see a system that can collaborate us and equip us instead of simply overseeing us or compelling us to compete. If that is what it means to be a connectional church, yes, being a Methodist church can be a Jesus thing.
When I think about the DAT recommendations and the potential for the Virginia Conference, the local churches, the clergy, the laity, the conference, and the district staff being able to work together in perfect harmony, focused on making disciples of Jesus Christ, of being witnesses to God's love in our community, that's what makes my heart sing.
And a big part of why I participate in the district alignment team is that I love the Virginia Annual Conference. And I have a special place in my heart for my clergy colleagues and friends. I dream of a time where our structure works best for us, a time where resources are utilized where they're most needed, where clergy are healthy and happy, and churches are thriving in the communities that God has blessed them with. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, what excites me most is that the steps that we take will really move us in that direction. I think that we will have an opportunity to see what we can do with God's work all around us.
Our work as the IDAT is not just cultural or organizational, it is holy work. We're called to this team by God through Bishop Lewis, and because of that, we take our commitment very seriously. Could this work be the beginning of the great awakening in our nation? Could this work be like the prophets of long ago, calling others to return to God? Could this work be the purpose for which God created each one of us? These are weighty questions, but also very important ones. I believe God is calling us to important and holy work. And I believe that God will guide us into this new thing that God is doing if we will but open our ears to hear God saying to us, "This is the way. Walk in it."
So I really can't see that video enough. I'm grateful for all the voices of the panelists and the IDAT members who created that. Friends, we're going to move into our PowerPoint presentation at this point. You will see the first slide, which shows how we will be spending our time together. We just viewed the video, and we will move through talking about the process, the teams, the research, and then walking through the individual strategies which are recommended. So I would like to talk a bit about the flow of the history of how we got to where we are today. John Wesley had this wonderful understanding of prevenient grace, a grace which goes out before us. I believe God's grace was very much at work when Bishop Cho was assigned to come back to the Virginia Conference. He knew he had 4 years to be with us as our bishop. And so he is a person of great prayer and wanted to call us into deeper prayer. Then when Bishop Lewis was assigned to the Virginia Conference, the Committee on Episcopacy welcomed her and wanted her to build on that practice of prayer, to cast a vision for the conference. Bishop Lewis, also a person of deep prayer. We are so blessed to have had these two Episcopal leaders build upon each other. And so Bishop Lewis got busy. She started moving throughout the Virginia Conference, participated in chat and choose sessions in every district. This was a way to receive feedback and then to prayerfully discern the vision that God has for the Virginia Annual Conference. Through that process and conversation and visioning, the vision was cast that we are to be disciples who are lifelong learners who influence others to serve. One exciting thing about the research of the DAT was great familiarity among clergy and laity. We have memorized this. We didn't just put it on a frame or a plaque and post it on a wall somewhere. It's made its way into our hearts. And so CFNA did ask Bishop Lewis, once this vision was cast, to establish a district restructuring task force. We've been talking about this for quite some time. How can we be better aligned with our district structure? And so the DAT, the District Alignment Team, was formed. They were to prayerfully discern how can districts most effectively order themselves for the adaptive challenges of the 21st century, and there are many. We are using the word adaptive quite a lot because we are facing so much change. So out of the DAT came recommendations, which the bishop wanted a group called the IDAT, the Implementation District Alignment Team, to discern and recommend pathways for the implementation of these strategies so that they would just not be words on paper, but would make their way into the lives of our church's clergy and laity. So in this next slide, you can see there's our mission as United Methodists, and then here is our vision. Now we are at the place of alignment and to see how the Spirit of God can flow through our structure. A key verse for us is Joshua 1:9. I've commanded you to be strong and brave. Don't ever be afraid or discouraged. I am the Lord your God, and I will be there to help you wherever you go. You'll see on this next slide the question that the DAT dealt with. How can districts most effectively order themselves for the adaptive challenges of the 21st century? And then what the DAT is offering: 6 interrelated strategies to create a system that is adaptive, nimble, and efficient. Because we want our churches to thrive now and in the future in the midst of turbulent conditions. So both of these teams have been praying teams. You'll see the prayer on the left that the DAT prayed every evening at 8:45. You will see on the right the names of all the members who met every 2 weeks from May 2020 to November 2020. Quite a big time commitment on the part of those individuals listed. So you'll see as things flowed forward, the question for the DAT they're offering, and then the challenge for the IDAT was to discern and recommend pathways and feasibility for the implementation of each recommendation. The IDAT is still in the midst of that process. And so one of the reasons why we are here tonight is to get more feedback from you. IDAT also has its prayer, and you'll see that on the left, we do pray every evening at 8:45. And you also see the members who have been meeting weekly since December 17th, 2020, like the DAT, just a group of gifted individuals, clergy and laity who bring quite a lot of resources and perspectives to this work. So we believe this process is different from other processes. First of all, it has been a prayerful approach. We know that, as Jesus said, apart from me, you can do nothing. And so we are seeking to rely on the power of the Holy Spirit. This has also been a time of relationship building and valuing relationships as we move forward. We are always trying to stay aligned with the vision. We have the vision in front of us, and we want to align with our vision without regard to current barriers. As good United Methodists, we also want to be in compliance with the Book of Discipline and conference rules as well. And we do value the work that is done throughout all 16 districts. God has a way of using everything that we bring, and that's certainly true for the work of the districts and churches in our annual conference. This is not driven by a cost cutting, and we acknowledge that this will be quite a process that will involve extensive ongoing training and support. So at this point, I'm going to invite Denise Bates to begin to talk more about the work of the DAT and survey results.
So we started out by conducting extensive research to learn what we needed to know. So our question was, what do clergy and lay leaders need to lead into the vision? And then how can districts be ordered to deliver on those needs? We started with research. And there was a ton of agreement in the research, which included over 700 voices, as well as with the bishop's learnings during her chat and choose, along with researching best practices in other conferences, cross districts, and within our own Virginia Annual Conference. All of this was consistent with the many conversations heard throughout the conference from a wide variety of people. So this is one of my favorite charts. So from the research, we have this chart, and it was a meaningful discovery about what people in local church, clergy and lay, felt the priorities should be for their local churches. So the blue dot you see in the chart is what respondents told us were the current priorities of their local churches. And the yellow dot is what they feel what should be the priority. So both clergy and laity tell us that they need the system to change the focus so that they can change their focus. You'll note the priority shift in care for community, serving others, and sharing our faith. So this tells us that desire is for church priorities to move to be more externally focused. Now, if you look to the right, you'll see worship services. I just want to speak to that for a moment. Don't mistake the results as saying that worship should be a lower priority. This is a chart is a relative thing, because we know worship is central and always will be. Rather, this indicates a belief that priorities need to shift outside the walls of the church into the community to be the hands and feet of Christ, to be the church. So, what do leaders need to make that happen? You see here, resources and leadership development were seen as key by both clergy and lay. Clergy also rated encouragement and prayer as something that they need from their district office and from their district superintendent. Given that resources are needed by clergy and laity, what's the most helpful source for those resources? For laity, an overwhelming percentage ranked their own pastor as their preferred resource. Also rated highly by laity were leaders of other similar churches. Clergy rated this source highly, both pointing to the value of contextualization. Clergy rated coaches, consultants, United Methodist experts, along with peer groups as the next most valued sources. So, to sum up, local church leadership and clergy feel that the focus needs to shift to the community and that they need resources and help to do this. There is a desire for focused, contextual leadership development and support that is continuous, especially by clergy. Clergy are looking for a new expression of collaboration with their colleagues so they can be a better resource for their churches. Also, there was a recognition that district superintendents are currently operating at or being asked to operate at many levels with many different duties and tasks. In addition, the current conference and district structures and procedures produce much administrative work that doesn't add value to the local church's mission and ministry. So all of this research pointed the district alignment team to 6 recommendations to support the creation of a system that is adaptive, nimble, and efficient so that our churches can thrive in current and future turbulent conditions. Recommendation number 1 gets to the heart of resourcing clergy. As indicated by the research, laity look to their clergy as a primary resource. So resourcing clergy becomes key to laity and clergy and churches being able to move into a new future. Recommendation number 2 wonders about the system needed to support and nurture cooperation and collaboration so they can more effectively engage with and be relevant in their communities. Recommendation number 3 speaks to the acknowledged need to update our processes and structures so they can be more effective and efficient, which will create capacity for laity, for clergy, for district staff, and district superintendents. So all may bring additional focus to ministry and mission. Recommendation number 4 speaks to offering new ways forward and excitement by resetting the district landscape to support continuing revitalization in all areas of the annual conference. Recommendation number 5 is the vehicle to ensure that all districts throughout the conference have access to a sufficient level of resources and possibilities. Doing this is a matter of connection. Finally, and very importantly, how will we know this is working? Recommendation number 6 speaks to measuring the impact that the changes are having on our local churches, communities, and the living out of our vision and mission. This recommendation will develop measures of effectiveness so we can assess, but also so we can foster a culture of fearless innovation.
Thank you, Denise. Now I'm going to ask Reverend Tracy Bass if he will lead us in our first 2 recommendations.
Thanks, Scott. I am happy to, and greetings, everyone. To align with our vision of developing disciples who are lifelong learners who influence others to serve requires resourcing the church in general and clergy in particular. Clergy who will then equip and empower the laity. As we have learned earlier, the research found that the laity look overwhelmingly to the clergy for resourcing. And so it follows that well-resourced clergy will impact the lives and ministry of the laity. The question becomes then, how can we most effectively resource our clergy? I want you to hold on to that for a moment. To live into our mission or to align with our mission, to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world and to follow the imperative of Christ to go requires, especially during these times, that we be more collaborative, that there be more collaboration between churches. This will allow many to go beyond what they could not do alone. It's an asset approach. It's getting away from silos and competition. It's bringing together resources that are available in a community to impact the community, to reach outside of our buildings. The question becomes, how can we create a system of collaboration to more effectively and relevantly engage our communities? So the first 2 recommendations are: 1, support and resource clergy as a matter of priority. And the second, facilitate collaboration between churches as a matter of community. What we see here is what appears to be a pretty exhaustive list of DS duties. Serving on the cabinet, and that includes the appointment process, guiding district boards and committees, serving on boards, conference and external, could be GCF&A, could be Westpath, for example, managing real estate issues. And I know many of us know that cemeteries can be particularly challenging at some time. Call on for crisis intervention, support and encourage, including individual or spiritual, administrative support, charge conferences, administer SPRC process for moves. Again, another level of the appointment process. Provide policy interpretation, facilitate peer collaboration, provide leadership development, a very expansive job. Now we see to the left of your screen, a list of clergy needs. We have consistent leadership development, and not only consistent, but we need it to be relevant and contextual and visionary. Peer collaboration, which is essential, of course, to the work of pastoral ministry. Clergy need support and encouragement. Crisis intervention with the various crises that they encounter, and administrative support. And we know that administrative tasks can become very cumbersome at times. Our next slide. Well, establishing this new position to focus exclusively on clergy development assures that needs are consistently met. It allows for the DS to be that missional strategist. With all of these things in mind, we are looking to place 17 district developers in the field. How exciting is that? 17 district developers in the field. And I'm excited that Scott Davis, who has been praying about this and thinking about this for some time, will soon move into his new role, as you heard earlier, as the District Alignment Transition Coordinator, focusing on the role of the district developer. The district developer will move around the district, getting to know clergy. And this doesn't mean that the DS will not continue to do that as well, continue to know clergy as well. The district developer, again, will free the DS to focus on the work of the missional strategist. She or he can find new and innovative ways and for points of contact, new and innovative points of contact. The district developer will be someone who listens, someone who is caring, someone who has a heart to see ministry enhanced and help bring to bear the resources to elevate ministry and community engagement. Someone who can hear the dreams of what God is saying to our pastors. Someone who can be there to listen and help support and help resource pastors on the district. The DD will be a person who will help facilitate peer collaboration. Often the missing link is a facilitator. I know with our cluster, we certainly had the desire to collaborate, and we were so very thankful when someone stepped up to facilitate. Often what is missing is the facilitator. There will also be district admin managers to provide support as we continue to think about how to do this work better. Our next slide. Again, the focus on clergy development will free up the DS to serve and work as a missional strategist. There will be 3 primary focus areas for the district developer: to know, resource, and mentor clergy, to facilitate clergy to clergy collaboration, equip clergy for leading new expressions of community engagement. The disciplinary authority for next steps. The bishop has approved this new role. CFA included it in a proposed 2022 budget. And at Annual Conference 21, there will be a vote on this proposed budget. We want you now to just take a few moments to reflect on what you have heard, because we value and covet your feedback regarding these recommended strategies and pathways. So we want you to answer a couple of questions. You can respond on the Google form and send those as instructed earlier, and you'll hear more from Scott shortly. Here are the two questions. What resources do you think would be most helpful for our clergy? What resources do you think would be most helpful for our clergy? And describe how you would like to see your church form new connections in your community. Describe how you would like to see your church form new connections in your community. Let's take a minute to reflect on that.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you everyone for entering your responses in the link. At this point, I would invite Sandra Fulcher to talk about recommendation number 3.
Thank you, Scott. I'm excited to see so many participants, and I'm so very glad that you have an ability to share your feedback during this listening session. As Scott said, I've been with the Danville District as an administrative assistant for 22.5 years. I'd like to speak to the third recommendation offered by the district alignment team. That is to streamline and automate routine, repetitive processes as a matter of stewardship. And the question of how can we update our structures and processes to be effective and efficient in order to free up valuable time and resources for ministry. In the Danville District Office, my duties include accounting and annual budget planning, maintaining financial records, including bank accounts, answering phone calls, and responding to more than 75 emails daily, scheduling annual district conference and charge conferences, maintaining information and records for certified lay servants, following up with charge conference reporting, particularly chasing down required signatures. There's a great deal of administration and paperwork. You can hear that and you can see that. There has to be a way to streamline most of these responsibilities. It's possible to send some of these tasks back to the conference office. It's also possible that we could do away with some of the charge conference reports or streamline them. These are the recommended pathways. Design and implement several short-term administrative relief projects. Acquire process improvement resources for rethinking and automating processes. Audit and plan for our current IT system to undergird the new future. On the left side of your screen, we are asking for your feedback on the 2 questions. This feedback is so very important to help us shape our work. The questions are, as you engage in district and conference processes, what is the biggest administrative headache that you wish would be addressed? Second question is, where do you see replication across districts and conference, where multiple groups are focused on the same issues and tasks? Please take a moment to answer these questions in the Google form.
Thank you, Sandra. Now we're back to DS Denise Bates to talk about recommendations 4 and 5.
Thank you, Scott. Well, for me, recommendations 4 and 5, they get to the heart of what it means to be connectional. Connection is part of God's created order. We were designed and created to care for and share with each other. Connection is the essence of what it means to be United Methodists, as we share resources for ministry to happen in all places. What does it mean to be in connection in the world we live in today? And how can we be best prepared to continue vibrant, fruitful connections in the future? These 2 recommendations speak directly to this. Recommendation 4 calls for the resetting of the landscape of our conference at district level for revitalization's sake. What we mean by that is forming new districts, not consolidating districts, not just drawing new, but creating new districts that make sense for today and offer new ways forward. Additionally, we recommend the creation of an equitable baseline for our district budgets as a matter of connection to ensure that every church in every district has a sufficient level of resources and possibilities. Friends, I have served in 3 different districts as a pastor and now 2 as a district superintendent. And I can tell you that the amount of resourcing can vary widely between districts in the system that we currently have. So currently, we have 16 districts served by 14 district superintendents. We're looking at this as a pathway because a new approach can allow us to focus on missional strategy and to fully support one another and offer efficiencies. In the 2021 and 2022 conference year, we will have 16 districts served by 8 DS. This step will allow for opportunities for experimentation, innovation, and preparation for movement toward larger districts. We will retain the current structure we have, but we will move to 8 district superintendents for this short season. It will be a time of learning and preparation. We are following in the footsteps of other conferences who have made similar changes, including all the other conferences in the Southeast jurisdiction. The number of district superintendents is by discipline part of the episcopal authority of the bishop. The bishop sets the number of district superintendents, and the bishop draws the boundaries of the districts. The annual conference authorizes the number of districts. So here is a possible future. We are considering 8 new districts and are still deeply discerning about this. Look at all those dots. Those are local churches in our Virginia conference. Now, we are all aware that the demographic and sociological patterns within the Virginia conference have changed since the last time districts were drawn. So why 8? Well, 8 districts offers opportunities to reimagine our current structure in ways that are more fruitful and align for current reality, and also position us for the future. Next slide. As we move to recommendation number 5, you'll see that we are still having discussions about connectional resources and district budgets to discern ways to be equitable that takes into account the diversity of contexts we find in the Virginia Conference. So baseline budgets will take into account the cost of living and apportionment levels in our district contexts. Ultimately, CFA will work out the details as they do with all of the budgets. there are fruitful ministries, friends, happening throughout all of the conference, even though there is a wide disparity in resources for support and opportunities for equipping. So our three goals are these: that every clergy person has equitable support and opportunities regardless of appointment, that every church has opportunity for fully equipped leadership regardless of location, and that members of all communities are valued children of God with whom we are called to connect. An equitable baseline for district budgets will provide all districts with a level of support to engage in missional outcomes, regardless of location, appropriate for their context. It is the essence of being connectional, and this is the essence of Christian community. So, as we return to recommendations 4 and 5, let's take a look at the recommended pathways. At Annual Conference 2022, we recommend a move to 8 new districts. A second pathway is to encourage discernment and discovery around best practices for simplified, effective district governance that supports fruitfulness in the local church. Third, development of a pathway to baseline budgeting that allows all districts a sufficient level of resources. This will vary contextually, so we are not looking at a flatline method. That would make sense for us. So we're taking the time and effort it needs to develop this recommendation well and fairly. So then what are the next steps for these pathways? Who has the disciplinary authority to, as Captain Picard says, make it so? First, the bishop has appointed 8 new DSs for 16 districts for the 2021-2022 conference year, which begins on July 1st, 2021. The bishop draws the district boundaries. CFA discerns and aligns the budgets for 2022 and 2023. And here's where you have voice and vote. Annual Conference 2021 and Annual Conference 2022 will vote on the budget. The budget we will vote on in June 2021, which will actually be the budget for the year 2022, will contain the framework for the baseline budgeting, as well as be aligned with the other recommendations. Annual Conference 2022 will vote on the number of districts, and Annual Conference 2022 will vote on any necessary conference rule changes that will support and nourish these recommendations and their implementation so that they can impact all of the churches, clergy, and laity, and the communities of the Virginia Annual Conference. So now we want to have your feedback. As others have said, it's key to our continuing work. So as you see on the right side of your slide, there are 2 questions for you to use that Google form to answer. It will help us so much. So the first one is, what district practices do you think have outlived their usefulness? What district practices do you think have outlived their usefulness? And then the second question is, what are ways to ensure that clergy are supported equally across the conference, regardless of what district they serve? What are the ways to ensure that clergy are supported equally across the conference, regardless of what district they serve? So please take a few moments to answer these questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Thank you, everyone, for entering your responses. And of course, the Google link is there in your chat feature, and you can also go to the conference website, vaumc.org/DAT. So our final recommendation, number 6, is to determine how to measure our effectiveness to foster fearless innovation. So this is something that is still in process. We want your feedback on everything, but this would really be helpful if you could give us some insight about how do we measure the impact that we want to make. It's in our vision statement that we want to influence. We want to have an influence. The early Methodists were known for their influence in terms of what they did in their communities, and many people who had a transformative spiritual experience as they became disciples of Jesus Christ. So how should we measure that in our local churches, communities, in alignment with our vision and our mission? So please take a few moments to give us some feedback about this recommendation, which again is very much in process. The first question is, what are some ways you would measure your church's success in reaching your community? So think about your context and the community around it. And I think you can also, for instance, think of a virtual community as well. What are some ways you would measure your church's success in reaching your community? Secondly, how can we change the ways we measure success in order to encourage fearless innovation in our churches? Some of the metrics we're using now are not working. So how can we change those ways to measure success to encourage fearless innovation in our churches? So I'll give you a few moments to make your responses. Thanks again, friends, for your responses. We're going to move to the closure of our PowerPoint presentation. You'll see in this graphic what alignment means for us. These are recommended strategies and pathways so that the way in which our districts function in line with the mission and vision of our church can have a great impact for the kingdom. We have our mission of making disciples. We have our conference vision, and we believe these recommendations will lead us into greater alignment and impact. Next slide. We also think this is a framework that can be used by other district and conference entities. One thing I treasure about this time in the life of our conference is I do see greater conversation and collaboration. I don't know, it may be also because of the pandemic, some things that we may have taken for granted about being the church, we no longer want to. So how can we enter into deeper conversation and action so that every part of our conference is moving in the same direction to the glory of God? So friends, at this point, we are going to move into a time of feedback. We do want you to just look at these questions, which we just have walked through. These are all the ones that were in purple throughout the PowerPoint presentation. It's not too late to still enter feedback there. You can also enter questions in the Q&A. And near the end of our time, we will invite some live interaction as well. So I'm going to start with the first question, and that is, can you address what does alignment mean in this context? So I want to take a stab at it and see if any of our other panelists want to have some feedback. When I saw that question, the first thing that came to mind was John Wesley was an organizer. I remember when I first saw that word, I thought of him as, preacher and pastor, but his great gift, someone has said, was being able to organize the classes, the small groups. He knew that giving your life to Christ would make a huge difference, not just inwardly, but outwardly. The small groups taught people how to pray, how to study the Bible, and also how to move out into the community. Methodists established some of the first medical clinics, educational opportunities for children who were working otherwise, rights for minors who were working under deplorable conditions. So there was great alignment in the early Methodist movement. Our mission was played out in the lives of ordinary people. And so alignment's a word we're using a lot. Anyone else have a perspective on the panel about the word alignment? Tracy?
I've been trying to think of a way that we haven't said it. And what comes to me, to mind for me, is that there has to be a correlation between who we say that we are and what we say that we do, and how we support those things, that we value. That is what I would offer.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, well, the next question we have is how do conference committees, boards, and agencies figure into this new plan? Denise, I don't know if that one has your name on it. What do you think about all of our boards and agencies?
I just think you put my name on it, Scott. Thank you. We talk about John Wesley starting a movement, and I think this is the start of a movement that can have great benefit in all of our connection throughout the conference. One thing we talked about on the DAT and the IDAT was that the district is this bridge between the local church and community and the conference. So it makes sense to kind of focus first on getting alignment and innovation in the district, in that system, and then have that help kind of feather out into the local church in ways we've talked about tonight. But I also see it feathering out into our conference structure and our conference boards and agencies.
Thanks very much, Denise. Really resonate with that understanding. And I think it feels to me like there is a movement. There is a work of God that is starting, and not that God hasn't been working through us, but I just see people who are kind of lit up, more and more energized about their work throughout the conference. Do you have a question about how district lay leaders will be utilized further than they currently are? And I am going to ask Sandra, you have been around a lot of leadership during your time, well connected throughout the conference. What do you think about that question?
Well, I'm excited about what the laity can offer, not just to the clergy, but to the churches and to beyond the church doors. I know many lay leaders, and I'm a lay leader in my local church, who are operational and very important in the ministries outside the church door. They have started particular ministries that were needed, they found after COVID started. They had to redesign how they worked in the community. And they're very innovative. They think outside the box. And I think that's the mark of a good lay leader.
Thank you very much, Sandra, for that. Tracy, I want to head back to you with a question about how does a district developer resource clergy?
Hey, Scott, I would say that a district developer is a resource, not the only resource, but a resource. And resourcing is contextual, which is what I really love about the resourcing. And resourcing will occur in the way that you can generally imagine. Certainly financial resourcing, a link, the district developer will be a link to resources, other resources. including financial, but also best practices, also training, also, for example, facilitating peer collaboration. Endless opportunities.
Yeah, thanks very much. I appreciate your energy around that. And I think a good segue for the next question, which I can answer, and that is, are district developers going to be solely clergy? Can we reiterate how these persons will be selected? Will they apply? So you may have heard that initially we were looking at district developers being solely clergy. We've received feedback, we've been in a discernment process, and so the pool of district developers will be open to laity. And I think that speaks to the resources that really abound in our annual conference. I appreciate how earlier it was mentioned that we want to have an asset orientation. I remember Bishop Pennell used to say that Virginia is as rich as cream. Bob Carpenter, former conference lay leader, called us a sleeping giant. Sometimes we need to have other people tell us that there are just vast resources here, and I think that is God's way. So we will be using the resources that are in the lives of lay people who can do this work and do it well. We don't have a selection process yet. The timeline, roughly, as I see it, is to build the pool, which is already kind of starting as names kind of surface. No selection made yet, but throughout the fall. And then selection process moving into hopefully the new year. Those who are clergy would need to be appointed by the bishop and cabinet, and then training and formation so that they can be ready to hit the ground running July 1st, 2022. David, I guess you're wondering when the financial questions would start rolling your way. And so now's the time. We won't take them all in order, but let's just start with this first one, David. And it is, explain what CFA is and how it functions in the annual conference.
Okay, CFA is short for the Council on Finance and Administration. It is the board at the conference level that oversees the budgeting, the financial operations, the accounting, auditing, and stewardship of the resources of the annual conference. It is in their work related to this where they asked Bishop Lewis to appoint a group to look at the district structure. We invest millions of dollars of resources into districts and district structure, and it had not been looked at in a while, and CFA thought it would be good to just look at this process, make sure we are being good stewards of all those funds related to the district structures. So that's how CFA kind of fit in the timeline and the story of the DAT. But it is the group that will recommend the budget to annual conference, and they set the financial policies of the annual conference.
Great, thank you very much. So I think I can take the next one, and Tracy and anyone else, if you want to jump in. The district developer becomes the key component to district success and implementing and facilitating change and growth. Do you have a game plan for identifying and training candidates for this position? First of all, I want to say I appreciate that recognition. So the way I understand what is happening is that we are reallocating resources that have been used to support 16 DSs and putting people in the field who will help the work and role of the DS to, as Tracy was saying, move around, work with clergy, come alongside them. And so I think this would be someone who knows how to listen, is open to learning, is humble in that way, lives out this vision, loves clergy and laity and the church, wants to see them all succeed in their context, can hardly wait to get out the door and into the field, knowing that God is already out there doing the work. And as Tracy has eloquently said, connect to resources. We live during a time when there's no like one playbook. Maybe there was like at one point, whatever United Methodist Church you would go into, they were doing the same thing. We're not there anymore. And so aside from what the person is doing, it's who the person is. And Tracy, do you have anything to add to that, or things you're thinking about?
I think that was good.
Okay, great. In terms of a plan, yeah, when I start my work in my next appointment, we'll be working out a timeline and a plan. And I can hardly wait, to meet these people and work with them. So we're going to go back to David. David, what are the projected apportionment costs for district developers? Will these costs result in an increase, decrease, or no increase for conference apportionments?
Okay. The total projected cost of the district developers is between $1.6 and $1.7 million a year for their salary and benefits. The overall IDAT plan will result in an approximate increase of $15,000 in apportionments. But part of the plan is to shift the cost from what is currently in district administrative apportionments to the annual conference into what used to be the district superintendent's fund, which is now the district ministry support fund, still the 403 apportionment. So you will see when the book of reports comes out an increase to the annual conference apportionments for that, but there is a corresponding decrease in the district apportionments that will cover that increase. It's not an increase in apportionments paid by churches, but it is a shift from the district to the conference level. We've worked out the numbers, and I did a calculation. I think it's $15,192 at this point is what we're projecting.
Great, thank you. Sandra, coming back around to you, how does the district staff work along in this new alignment? In my district, we have a staff member who currently does some of what the developer would do. So what happens with district staff?
Currently, district staff, district administrative assistants particularly, will not change. There may be changes July 1 of 2022, but for the next year, they will stay the same. They will provide the same kind of support that they have to their district superintendents. I'm sure that the district developers, once they are set in place, or if they're clergy appointed in January, can work alongside the administrative assistants who are in the districts. And they will enjoy doing that.
Thank you. And I'll say for the district developers, we are starting with a blank slate. And so considering lots of different folks moving forward. Denise, I do have a question for you regarding lay servant ministries within the Virginia Conference. So they've been very active in training laity. But when a laity accepts a lay supply local pastor appointment, many times they are overlooked. So what's the vision of the DAT to be sure there's training for the lay supply pastor?
So lay supply pastors currently, we have an annual training that is offered to them. And what I would envision is through the developers and in collaboration with the district superintendents, there being not just an annual training to get your feet on the ground, but also follow-up training like alongside the clergy who are serving their district as well.
Great, thanks very much. Here is a question. Please give a few examples of when clergy would contact the developer versus the DS. Tracy, do you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. And I will begin at those three primary areas that we indicated that the DD would focus on: resourcing, mentoring, facilitating, collaboration, and equipping for new expressions of community engagement. I know it's going to be difficult to say don't contact the DS unless there are certain things, but we really do want to focus on the district developer working in these areas and collaborating around these areas so that we can have the best chance of success.
Yeah, well said. So the district developer is not supervisory, is not participating in the appointment process, but is very supportive of the work of the DS. So yeah, really well said. David, back to you. What is district admin manager line in the proposed budget? Like what is that?
The district admin line is the district administrative assistant position. We realize they're more of a manager than an assistant. And so we want to give them full credit for that. It's a district administrative manager position, funding for that.
Great, thank you. So another question is, are we putting the cart before the horse when we don't know what the conference will look like after General Conference 2020, which is being held in 2022, where there likely will be a split in the church? So this is a question about timing. Does anyone want to weigh in on that?
I'll take a stab at it. No matter what happens at General Conference, we will still need to engage with the community. We will still need to live out our vision. We'll still need to live out our mission. And the time for doing that is always right now.
Thanks very much, Tracy. Friends, we do want to have enough time for live questions. And so to do this, you will see at the bottom of your screen a raise hand button, and you can just click on that. And Chris Malik, who's doing a great job running our Zoom call, will provide the necessary link for you to speak. Is anyone who would like to raise their hand electronically? It's a Zoom hand, a kind of hand. If there are no, we can always go back to questions. Chris, is there? Okay.
No, we do. I just, we gotta get to them. All right, here we go. I've got Sue Lewis. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you.
Yep, great.
I had a question about the offices of the districts as we drop down to 8 districts, and actually what's happening in July anyway has some impact. What are we doing with district offices and district parsonages, if there are any, which I know there's at least one? How are those going to be handled?
Great question. Denise, would you like to weigh in on that one?
Sure, I had my hand up by the mute button. I knew you were going to call on me, Scott. So for this coming year, 2021 into 2022, there are no changes. In the district offices or different district staffs now, or in parsonages. So that isn't to say that as we move forward, we won't innovate around district offices and also district parsonages, but we haven't really dealt with that in particular right yet.
Thanks very much. It's interesting. Denise is following me on the Lynchburg district and is moving into the Parkview Community Mission Center. And I think moving forward, it's going to be fascinating to see how the new districts, play out where their district office will be. Chris, anyone else with their Zoom hand up?
Yeah. Next, we have Donald Whitaker.
Great. Hello, Donald. Can you hear us, Donald?
It looks like Donald is having technical difficulties. I'm going to move down to Edward Winkler.
Okay. Oh, hey, Ed.
It's actually not Ed, it's Nina.
Nina, okay. Hi, Nina.
I do this and I never get anywhere with it, but I think I'm going to throw out something that's completely wild, and I'd really like you all to have a conversation about it later. To me,
Okay.
the risk-taking that's being talked about isn't very risk-taking. I think if we want to grow the church and evangelize people who aren't out there and haven't heard the good news about Jesus Christ, we need to let pastors, or excuse me, clergy, do that. They're the ones who are trained to do that. Are expecting local churches to launch all kinds of new things. I think that's been proven not to be very productive, certainly during my many years as a Methodist. What I would suggest you consider is kicking pastors off of all church committees except worship, and perhaps the DCOM, and maybe the boom. Have the lay leaders become true lay leaders instead of sort of symbolic people to run all the business of the local church. And the pastor's job is to be the theologian in residence, to be a street preacher, to be a Sunday preacher, to be a person who is visible outside the church to the community as the Methodist presence in that neighborhood, and to bring people into the church as the pastor meets them. I know this is risky and it's probably crazy. It's probably never going to happen, but just talking about, adding staff and maybe simplifying some of the paperwork is not very likely to make dramatic change. I think this would. That's it.
Thank you, Nina, very much. Chris, do we have another person?
Yeah, but next up is Barbara Schweitzer.
Okay. Hi, Barbara. Would you like to unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Hi. Yes, we can.
Okay, so I have to qualify my comments. I am a new local pastor, just graduated seminary a year ago. And then I had to, hello?
Yeah, congratulations, sorry.
Okay, so I'm virtually fairly unexperienced as a new local pastor, minus a couple months. But I had some experience in third world missions. I've been doing lots of different things over, 35 years or so of my adulthood. I'm now 57, 58. My first experience in this local church, I had a charge of 2 churches that were very small, one country and one town. They were having a very difficult time just paying their apportionments, and they couldn't afford a full-time pastor, so they had to share one. And then in the process of this year, they're actually going to become a 3-point charge, and that causes really some divisions, and some people, they don't want to share pastors. You all know those kinds of conflicts. This district realignment, I actually agree with Nina, who was just talking about get the pastors out there doing what they're trained to do and get them out of the administrative and the church committees and all of that. Employ the lay people with their gifts and talents. They have so many of them. And my whole lay committee, they had way more experience than I did with the local church. They knew the Methodist polity better than I did. We need to get out there in the community. But my concern is you're saying that this new alignment is going to increase apportionments by 15,000. I've got a master's in nonprofit management and leadership. We are adding more administrative costs for more people and salaries rather than mission. And that's not a good policy. And nonprofit watchers, organizations, they look at, an organization should only pay 8% of their overall budget to administration. The rest should be on mission. And I don't see that happening in the Methodist Church. I'm concerned that this is killing churches as well as us not being out in the community. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara. It sounds like just wanting the pastor in the community and lower administrative costs. David, do you want to speak to that 15,000?
Yeah, I'll kind of speak a little bit to both. The 15,000, we have 1,100 churches, works out to approximately $15 a church. Small churches, we're talking, maybe $1 or $2. The purpose of this is not more administration. District developers are not administration. District superintendents are becoming missional strategists who can look at their situations, work with district developers and pastors who want to try new things. Maybe the things that Nina suggested would be good to test in a pilot to see how that works. This system encourages that fearless innovation and risk-taking. And I think in a responsible way, and not just in a silo, but so that communication can happen and successes can be shared so others can adopt what is successful, that we will learn from our experimentations. And so this system is designed not to be more administrative. It's really designed to cut the administrative costs and pour money into ministry and the capabilities to go through experimental activities, how to engage new people, new ways of doing things, new ways of organizing church. It is designed to make that possible throughout the annual conference. And it's done to cost virtually no more money than we were currently spending on our old system. And so these ideas of how we do things are wonderful. The IDAT is creating a system where those things can be looked at, analyzed, and implemented and tested so that we can find ways to reach new people. In of itself, it is not an experimental, we're going to try one thing conference-wide. It is designed to be a system change where we focus on our leadership at the local church, clergy being unleashed, laity being unleashed to reach their communities in new and effective ways. And so that is the purpose of the IDAT recommendations.
Great, thanks, David. Well, I think very well said. And I will say in my work as a DS, so I'm always looking for the energy that I hear, Barbara, in your voice and Nina, as clergy or laity who are not content with things being the way they are, and just seeing what God wants to do with that openness and that willingness. I mean, I'm just always looking for anyone who is open and willing to take a step outside of their church and to do something new. And there are a lot of stories actually across the conference about clergy and laity who are partnering and are doing new things. I think in the midst of the pandemic, when we couldn't use our buildings as much, create a context for innovation. So definitely resonate with what David is saying as well. I think the district developer is going to be looking for those conversations and to help with the impact in communities. Chris, do we have another virtual hand raised?
We have one more. Yuta Hardman Cromwell.
Oh, great. Hi, Yutha. Yutha, do you want to unmute? Hello? There we go.
Okay. My questions are around the district developer. Do we have any district developers now?
Yeah, great question. Tracy, do you want to start with that one? Or
I'll kick it back to you, Scott.
Okay, Yutha, so we've got folks, we have some full-time, a handful of full-time people, some part-time people, and a lot of districts with no one who is being set aside to do that work. So there are people who are doing at least parts of this work. And I'm in the process, I've met with them as a group. They do meet together to resource each other, which is something that district developers, once this is rolling will do. There'll be a learning community together. So as we were saying earlier, we want to build on what's already being done. So yeah, there are people who are doing very important work. We just want to put people like that everywhere, every single corner of the Virginia Conference, to have access to a district developer who's living in a spiritual and learning community. And yeah, that's our goal. So it's to build on what's already out there and what folks are already doing.
Okay, I have more to my question.
Okay.
Okay, so how is it envisioned? I understand that they will not be employed until 2022. So does that mean that there will be 8 district developers, or what? How will they be deployed? How will they be resourced in terms of the financial and salary and housing support that clergy normally expect when they're in the local church? Have those things been considered?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for helping with the math on it. So there will be 17. And if we move to 8 districts, 2 per each district, and then 1 on the Eastern Shore for geographical reasons, having someone there. So salaries and housing is all a part of what CF&A is working on. And David, I don't know if you want to say anything else about the financial aspect of this, but we do want to resource them, compensate the district developers appropriately.
Yeah, for the district developers that are clergy, they will be resourced like clergy will be at the local church, you know, with the regular benefits and housing. District developers who are laity will be paid as lay. They will have a retirement plan, probably no housing, but you know, these are paid staff positions, and the salaries will be roughly equal.
Yeah, thank you. And I would add, Yutha, that we want the district developers to have access to all the resources for clergy in Virginia Conference so that they can know about them and connect them. And then they will be going through their own formation process as well. I just really envision a group of gifted and spiritual people. Okay, friends, I know we are getting near the end of our hour. We do want to take one final question, and that is how laity are going to end up being empowered through this process. Is there a panelist who would like to speak to that? Like Sandra, for instance,
I was ready.
Would be a great one.
As administrative paperwork moves out of the local church to someplace else, whether it's a conference center or whether it's, you know, forms are done away with, it will give them more time to resource themselves and others around them and to inspire them. I think of Tom Sawyer painting the fence. I see the laity as being those who are excited and passionate about what they do, and that they pull others along with them into the mission field. And I'm excited about that.
Thank you very much, Sandra. So I am so grateful for all the panelists for being here tonight. Thank you for everyone who is on the call. We have gleaned a lot of feedback, and we continue to move throughout the annual conference to have conversation. So thank you very much for being here. And this has been recorded as well, and you'll be hearing more and more updates about the work of the IDAT. But I do want to close us in prayer tonight, so let us pray together. Dear Lord, I thank you that before we got up this morning, you were already awake and at work in the world. And I thank you for going ahead of us to prepare the way for the building of your kingdom. I am so grateful for the Virginia Annual Conference, which is seeking to be more faithful, to use the resources you are making available to reach beyond the walls of our churches and to engage people with the love and grace of Jesus Christ. Life is completely different, we know, Lord, when we turn to you and begin to live as a disciple of your son, Jesus. So I pray for the next right steps in this process and in our lives, in our churches, our communities. Show us how we can be more responsive to your grace and to help bring about your kingdom, which you said would happen on earth as it is happening in heaven. And may that be so, I pray in the name of your son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Good night, everyone.